I think at this point in time, it's fair to say that I love Metroid. Metroid Prime 3 has some of the most atmospheric locations within the world, or within the franchise as a whole. And, well, Prime 3's most ironically atmospheric location is one that houses next to no atmosphere. Yes, that's right, we are tackling the pirate homeworld in Prime 3. Now, the pirate homeworld has a few major things that need to be talked about. Number one is contrast. So, up to this point, we've visited three separate planets, these being Norium, Brio, and Elysia. Norium is effectively the planet that General Grievous and Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars Episode 3 fought on. It is a military base in the caldera or crater or a canyon-esque location. This ends up being a really atmospheric and really tense situation for a combat encounter. Then you jump over to Brio, where you have the lush jungles, much more akin to what you would find in Metroid Prime 1. But then you have the fiery side of things that is very much more similar to areas like Magmore Caverns. The ice biome that you've come across that is effectively Phendrana Drifts. All of this makes sense. The third major location that you come across is, of course, Elysia.
Gandrayda's communication capsule has revealed additional information concerning the pirate facility. We believe there is a cargo supply route that connects directly to the sea. The gate in this room appears to be its main entrance. It will be impossible to go through that area unless you can find protection from the acid rain.
So as I was saying, the most recent planet we've been to is Elysia, a skybound city that is locked in perpetually floating above the clouds of this Jupiter-esque planet. Storms raging all around you, and yet it's somehow peaceful with its kind of tan and brown steampunk aesthetic that actually really suits this type of game. All this culminates in one of the most freeing, peaceful locations that you can get. Which brings me to the pirate homeworld. You are dealing with dark reds, oranges. You are dealing with an area that is more about infiltration, more about stealth than anything that came before. You are now well behind enemy lines. You cannot walk out in the sunlight because, lo and behold, you are now currently stuck indoors under acid rain trying to make it through enough of enemy territory that you'll be able to find your missing comrade, Gandrayda, by effectively running through ventilation shafts. This is the pirate homeworld in a nutshell. The pirate homeworld is claustrophobic, it's unnerving. You see pools and puddles of Phazon everywhere. Absolutely nowhere is truly safe in this realm. What I think really solidifies this notion is that, by and large, you're kind of stuck. Yes, you can go back to other planets, but not much can actually be done at any given point in time without being caught. Yes, absolutely. Samus, in many circumstances, is more than capable enough to get behind enemy lines and absolutely decimate her way through whatever comes her way. But this location, this foreboding and terrifying point in time, this is where Samus really shines as a character. Her power, of course, being unrivaled among the bounty hunters, has very little to do with her not being, or with her being strong, but rather it has to do with the fact that she has a tendency to get into places and do things that other hunters would only dream of. This type of mission, Gore would have no hope of completing. Rundus would have no hope of completing this mission. And it's not that the pair of them are bad hunters. Far from it. It is simply that the nature of this particular mission is not raw power. It's not about destructive. It's about stealth. It's about finding your way through enemy territory behind enemy lines without either being discovered or defeated before you get a chance to get to your final goal. Samus is, of course, in my opinion, the perfect person for this type of job. Gandrayda is a close second. Now, at this point in time, we're kind of working through the primary facility that guards their planetary defense system. It is effectively, Samus is dismantling their defense system prior to a major attack, similar to what they did to Norian in the opening of the game. But where Norian had enough time to get put back together, Samus and the Federation have planned around it and already have a strike force in low orbit. There's really nothing that can stop Samus from reaching her goal at this point. Now, as far as this area is concerned, I personally believe that Prime 3 does a lot very good in this particular area. Whereas Prime 1 and 2 were more about discovery and pushing into territory that was behind enemy lines, think of the Phazon mines in Prime 1 or the Sanctuary Fortress in Prime 2. These are very heavily defended locations within their respective games. Prime 3's is much more unnerving. It feels claustrophobic, anxiety-ridden to be anywhere in this vicinity at this point in time. And this is done purposely. And it's something that I think Retro doesn't get enough credit for. The devs at Retro Studios, when they created this game, going on, almost 20 years ago, they planned around this area feeling very different from anything that came before. Yes, the Phazon mines were claustrophobic compared to the lush plant life and vistas of Talon 4. But compared to...
This is Federation Trooper NCG-41. Can anyone read me over? Repeat, this is Federation. I'm transmitting on an encoded channel. I was taken prisoner during the attack on Norian, but I managed to escape. I have information about how to bypass the acid rain and get through to the seed. I don't know how long I can evade capture.
Anyways, comparing that location to what's going on here is very night and day. Whereas in the Phazon mines, those brief glimpses outside were a breath of fresh air. It looked and kind of alleviated some of that tension of having an idea, if not briefly, as to where you were at any given point in time. That all helped create a sense of comfort, even in those disorienting situations. Prime 3 doesn't have that. Prime 3's Pirate Homeworld, there is nowhere that is actually safe. It is all... You're always going to be in trouble. There's always going to be something that's not right, that's not safe, that's not reasonable. And there is a part of me that personally believes that that is, just simply put, good game design. Anywho, we're going to take a brief break from this particular section of the Pirate Homeworld. See, our lost Galactic Federation trooper needs a hand, so we're going to head over there really quick. And what was, or is going to be, probably about a minute for me is officially 1 second for you. So, we're at the second half of, or second section of the Pirate Homeworld. And this region is more about study, about research, instead of about planetary defenses. I personally think this area showcases a lot about the psyche of the space pirates as a whole. Now, in prior games and in prior discussions, it was mentioned that anything outside of militaristic might really wasn't the space pirates' forte. Now, I will not argue that it hasn't changed, but I will say that they have changed from simply stealing all their power from other worlds, other lands, and actually been developing their own. Now, one such thing that they developed was the X-ray visor, an upgrade that I recently got my hands on, my grubby little mitts on, that effectively allows Samus, and by extension the space pirates that were involved, to be able to see what's around the next corner and deal with threats that have armor more efficiently. Now, Samus uses the X-ray visor as in tandem with some other tools. Most notable ones that come to mind for me are the Nova Beam, which we'll be getting later, in order to bypass enemy defenses altogether. You know those really big behemoths that show up in the attack on Norian? There's 2 of them that I can think of, maybe 3 that we fought so far. Every single time we fought them, it's been easier than the times before, partially because they haven't actually changed. What makes this, I suppose, important to note is that the final encounter with one, we actually get to use tools that are better equipped to handle it. That blue plating on their back that you see in the opening, that you effectively have to send their attacks back at them to get at, is no longer a problem whatsoever. There's nothing really holding you back from facing them head on if you are so inclined. Because now, they're a one-hit wonder. Well, soon they're a one-hit wonder. The next one will be, I'm sure. Or at least was prior to Hypermode. Yeah, that's always a really tough statement to make. Hypermode changes a lot, so I'm not necessarily sure if that particular aspect gets changed or not. I hope it doesn't, because that seemed like a really... It was something that fundamentally changed the game, but in a way that still seemed fair. You're still using Samus's abilities and techniques to your advantage. It just happens to be that you're bypassing some shields this time. Yeah, I suppose there's a few really weird things to mention about this area. There's the fact that throughout the entire adventure, Samus is constantly using the X-ray visor in order to bypass enemy defense systems on a regular basis. Not a huge issue. But there's the other side of it where effectively you're slowly but surely repairing the area around you. Yeah, especially those circuit boards. Now, on Elysia, there was a definitive reason as to why those circuit boards were damaged. It was because Gore knew flat out that Samus would chase after him. And so the easiest way to prevent Samus from chasing him or succeeding in the mission of preventing the Phazon corruption was that effectively he just needed to slow her down, stall her temporarily. And, oh, that was a bad idea. This stalling her temporarily, while it definitely does exactly as expected, the goal of stalling Samus doesn't really amount to much in the grand scheme of Samus's power, shall we say. Oh, joy. Stuck in the bottom of that thing. So, after defeating Gore, you spend a large portion of time going from location to location that Gore was in, repairing circuit boards and slowly bringing life back to the area of Skytown. But here, there's not really a definitive statement as to why the world of the pirates is in as much disrepair as it is, only that Samus, in order to gain access to new areas, needs to slowly but surely fix the entire citadel, if you will, simply to gain access to new areas and eventually defeat new threats. Speaking of new threats, we have what is effectively one of the most frustrating and irritating enemy variants in Prime 3. The Red Hat version of the Space Pirate is capable of teleporting around. He is effectively the warden of this area. He acts as the primary defense and the individual who dispatches enemies or space pirates to deal with the Samus threat throughout the duration of her infiltration. Given that Samus has now been discovered, it is officially she is always under suspicion. That's the word I'm going to use. They're on high alert, assuming that each batch of green helmet space pirates that they dispatch effectively defeats Samus individually. What? Some lore I didn't scan? Interesting. I'm gonna have to get digging and make sure that I actually have it all before I start talking about that. Overall, I find this area is atmospheric in the opposite way, and I personally believe that it builds on everything that came before, if in a slightly backwards way. And I think that whatever we get in Prime 4, if it even comes close to the level of atmosphere that we're getting in Prime 1, 2, or 3, I personally can't wait. I feel as though the individuals at Retro, given the amount of time that has been spent perfecting what Prime 4 is going to be, I personally can't wait. I feel as though it is going to shatter expectations in many ways, but I also feel as though there's a lot of hate coming towards the devs, despite the fact that they're doing and have done as much as they have over the course of the last, what, 5, 10 years? And part of that, I do believe, comes from the fact that we are seeing a rather significant increase in cost for a lot of games. But to be honest, the writing's been on the wall for that aspect for decades. A game in 97 or even 2002 cost the same as a game in 2010. Yes, absolutely, there has been an uptick where they're going to now $80 games. But the development or the money that goes into developing these games is significantly more than what it was 20 years ago. So, in my mind, yes, the writing's on the wall. Yes, it's something that sucks for on a consumer end. But we also have to acknowledge that these people have been making what would effectively be art. And I can't help but feel as though we are going to see a huge... I know it's going to start on a negative foot, but I do believe that we need to pay our art. This particular change I don't feel comes from money grubbing. It doesn't come from greed. At least not from Nintendo. There are some that I would be hard pressed to disagree with a negative point of view, but this particular one, to me, just simply makes sense to me. The fact of the matter is that our world, especially when it comes to being a gamer and gaming in general, is going to be changing. And that's not a bad thing. If the people creating these games are getting paid what they are actually worth, then we may see a bloom in the industry. But the problem is that we become very complacent with certain aspects of our commerce system. And coming from an individual who spends a lot of time focusing in on finance in my day-to-day life, as that's what my job entails, to me, we've seen 10 years worth of inflation on the essentials. And these individuals who are effectively creating what I personally would identify as some form of art are still going to need, at the end of the day, to support their family. So, while there's a lot of controversy around it, I personally will continue to support the developers of these franchises, of these IPs that I have for years. Simply because I don't believe that the negativity is coming from the developers. CEOs? Maybe. But the developers themselves, I don't believe that there is animosity from them. Anyways, that got a little bit heavy and a little bit too political. So, at this point in time, we are just outside where we will be meeting up with our dear friend gandrayda. I mean, the Federation trooper. And this portion of the game I've always found somewhat interesting. Effectively, this trooper is in the absolute best and worst place imaginable. Like, The issue is that I believe that Gandrayda took off the disguise that was keeping her alive in terms of dealing with the space pirates. And in order to lure Samus out.
However, I've seen the pirates using a special suit shield that protects them from the elements. If you can acquire one of these shield units, you could probably make it to the seed. Lucky for you, I've seen where they make these devices. Here are the coordinates.
Anywho. So, that aspect of it is...
entrance to that location, but we'll need your help activating the lift that takes us there. We've got to engage the security levers simultaneously.
somewhat more of an interesting circumstance in my mind. The fact that while the other two, specifically Rundus, really lost himself, Gandrayda didn't lose her function, just that her mental function and awareness changed and made her more aggressive, more violent in nature. And so, yeah, I don't know. Anywho, if you like what you see, drop a like, leave a sub. We'll catch you next time.